I know what you did.
Did I end everything?
There's a difference between leave and end meeting for all. I made you a co-host, and so you had that capability.
Yeah, I pressed the wrong button. Whoops. Okay, let me share
It's
my
all
screen.
right.
So you should be able to just see my face and then also see the screen.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, we are
we're
good.
live and we are recording. So,
all right. If you wouldn't mind doing a quick introduction for Chai.
yeah, 1 second. Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to have a eco series workshop conducted by our very own Poppy, and this is going to be a very interesting workshop. We had Earth Day last week. However, the skills that you will acquire from observing this workshop and possibly participating can be used for the future and in whatever activism type projects that you want to use. So without further ado, I will pass it on to my Chai artist friend, and they are going to introduce you to poster making and additional types of graphics.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Today we're going to learn how to make some eco art posters and some of the thought that goes on behind making eco art. First, I just wanted to, introduce, well, there's supposed to be text here. I want to introduce the sponsors of this workshop, which is Dr. Earth Day and then Chai, which Alicia mentioned. Thank you so much. And I have the different Chai artists on this slide. There's Davina, me, Alicia, and Coda. A few other artists I think have joined us as well. So it's part of our artist team. And then I wanted to introduce, is that going cool? Oh, just a moment, the computer is giving me trouble here. So, there it goes. Okay, and I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Poppy Pays, and you can read a little bit about me here. I really love nature. I adore our planet, and I'm a graphic designer and artist locally. And yeah, I work with people on projects, the community, creatively, many different ways. So first, let's kind of go over what we're going to cover today. So we're going to make an eco art poster. And actually, before we do that, let's talk about what that is. So it's basically just using imagery and text to convey a message. And it can be any imagery and pretty much any sort of text, and you can get as creative as you'd like with it. I have created a poster today for the purposes of showing what that process looks like, but it's a rather flexible process. So here are the steps per se, but you don't have to do these steps in these orders, but this is kind of a helpful guide. So the first step is think about your message. So part of eco art is having a passion. And right now, the general theme passion for this workshop is Earth Day, because it seemed like an appropriate theme. And the day that we remember our planet. But your theme or your passion can be anything really. It can be you might have a passion for, say, there's an endangered species of snails, in your area and you want to raise awareness about the snails. I like snails. I like odd things like slugs and bugs and things, or you're concerned about some of the water issues going on here in California, or the fires, whatever it is that you want to communicate or make art about, just have your message in mind is good to do. So that's the first one. So gather relevant photos and artwork. So it looked like today we didn't really have much of a turnout, which is okay because this workshop will be free for anyone to view in the future. But yeah, if you are an artist, go ahead and gather your artwork. If you are a photographer, I'm sure you have many beautiful photos. And if you are neither, that's totally cool because we all have these things, which are great. And you can go out and take awesome photos of nature, of your backyard, or whatever thing that you're passionate about. And you can always use photos from online as well. Just make sure that you're paying attention to copyright, because if it's a personal project, it's not that big of a deal. As long as you credit the person you're taking the artwork or the photo from. But if it is a commercial thing, like if you're part of a nonprofit or an organization and you're putting together a poster for something, you want to be careful to give credit where it's due. And then the third step will be combine the photos. And we'll go over each of these more in detail. So I'm just going to go over them really fast here. Think about your copy, write it out in a few fonts, position it with your images and solid background, and other background texture if needed. So I'll expand on that further. So, whoops. Okay, so yeah, I kind of just went over this. What's your poster for? Keep it in mind. There's a lot of different reasons to make posters or even collages in general. Coda makes some really cool artwork collages if you want to check them out on the Chai Etsy for an example, or you can look at some work from on Earth Day for some graphic design. But yeah, there's lots of different reasons to put together posters so that you can make inspiring wall art, you can do advertising, you can raise awareness, you can just have some fun. For this particular project though, we're gonna do focus. I made an eco art poster specifically on raising awareness about an issue. It's not an advertisement, it's just an aesthetically pleasing poster. So if anyone's following along, that's what's going to be focused on today. And so what is eco art? It's really any art that is related to spreading awareness or related to the environment in a positive way. And usually the artwork it can incorporate materials that are eco art friendly or eco-friendly. Like, for example, Alicia does bottle cap work, which is very cool. And I think in the last Earth Day, there might have been some art displays possibly that had eco art. If not, it's something to be cool to have in the future. But yeah, it's usually focused on the environment. And let's see, is there any new information here? Oh yes, so one thing that's used a lot in eco art is powerful images and metaphors. And I'm sure y'all kind of heard of metaphor, but if you haven't, it's a figure of speech that, for rhetorical effect, directly refers to one thing by mentioning another. It's kind of technical, so basically it just means it's referring to one idea or it's communicating one idea by referring to something different that is related to that idea. And I'll show an example here in a second. Or some examples are an hourglass. It's often used as a metaphor for time. So like the time we have left for our ice caps, per se. Or a powerful image is a duckling looking sad, covered in oil. Those are two different things. Powerful image is a cute animal in distress, and a metaphor would be like the hourglass being like the ice caps. And this is used, the reason why I bring this up is because it's used a lot. in eco art. I noticed very consistent uses of imagery that evokes emotion, which is great. That's what we're going for a lot of the time with art, or images that have a subliminal message or a hidden message that's not so hidden. So here's some examples. This is not my work. Want to just be clear, give credit to the artist. Her name is Yume. She's a big inspiration for me. And as you can see, she's done a poster here. And it says, if a tree grows, then why don't we plant it? And it shows a powerful image of someone with a shovel planting a tree in an area with a lot of, trees that are burnt. And in the background, there's some industrial stuff. So it's a very impactful image. And then here she has a interesting metaphor, or parallel with plant life in a gas mask sort of setup. And it's kind of dystopian, kind of science fiction-y, but it's very powerful image. So these are kind of examples of artwork that have metaphors in them. So I'll just linger on this a little bit. And there's tons of work like this. If you just want to put in, do a Google search, you can look up eco art or environmental art. There are lots of examples, lots of inspiration. Okay, so the actual steps of making it. If you have Photoshop, great. Go ahead and create a canvas. Make it 8 by 8.5 by 11. That's the size of a regular piece of paper. And set it at 300 dpi. If you have Canva, then just pick the poster option. If you have another program, that's also fine. You can just go ahead and make a 8.5 by 11 document at a reasonable pixel count. So pixels, just in case you don't know, all the images that create graphics are made out of pixels. They're just points. So when you have a lot of points, it means that your image is not blurry. So you want to make sure that you have enough points or pixels so that when you go to print out your image, it's not going to be blurry. So 300 is a good medium for that. If you are just posting it online, 72 is fine, but 300 pixels or points is better, just to be safe. Okay, so if you make your canvas, you can make your canvas, and then for the settings, you might not even want to pay attention to this as much, but if you do, I will usually stick to RGB mode. This is a mode that you can find in whatever program you're using to create your graphic. It's going to probably give you this option. Canva might not, but if it does give you the option, just pick RGB mode because you can get more vibrant colors. And when you print things out, CMYK is for print. However, it usually dulls it, and I found that when you print things out with RGB, it's usually about the same brightness. So RGB mode is good. And that's it. You're ready to go with your canvas. Okay, so for photos, I actually had a folder prepared for anybody who wanted to use photos in case they didn't have any. That was one of the prerequisites, I think, for this class, was that you would bring your own photos or art. But this is just a live session, so if there's anyone watching right now, I'm not sure. If you would like, after, you can send us a message on Facebook and I can share that folder with you. I just have various pictures of nature. I have the one right next to this is a picture of nature that I took, and that one's also one. It's another one. So if you need pictures to use, but again, pictures are, you can go out and take some in your backyard. If you're looking for very specific ones, you can get some online, and just make sure the copyright. There's lots of stock photo websites. And yeah, you can even use your own artwork. And I kind of combined both in this example, as you'll see. And actually, it's a great excuse to get out and about, to go take photos of, mushrooms or bugs, or if you don't like bugs, that's understandable. Butterflies, maybe a bird once in a while. Just nice things to have as resources later. But again, it might not correlate directly to your passion, and you might want to take pictures of something that's specific to what you are trying to communicate. So if you're trying to communicate, let's say, about the water here in Stockton, the water issues, you might want to go out to the Delta and take some photos there, or find photos that relate to water or groundwater. Okay, so editing the photos together, actually, let me do this one first. So as you can see, first of all, let me actually show you the final, oops, just to give you some context. So this is the final poster that I'm going to walk you through today. It's just about Earth Day. It's Earth Day awareness. April 22nd is the day, remember, we all live on the same planet, so let's protect our home. And it's just a pretty graphic reminder that can be shared online, it can be printed out, it can be used as an advertisement, it can be put up in your house. So this is just an example to show the process of making a poster. So let's go back to editing. So the photos I used were my hands. In order to do this, I set up my computer and I did this, and I took a picture of it. So, and then I used some program to paint over it a little bit, but that wasn't even needed. Don't even need to do that. And then I cut out the hands. And I had this idea ahead of time too. That's the thing that's why I kind of say think about your message and think about what you want to communicate, because you can kind of piece together photos to get the image you want or the message you want. Or if you're an artist too, you can draw it out. So you don't have to do photo manipulation, which might be a little bit too advanced for some people. I understand it's an acquired skill. And if you would rather draw, it doesn't have to be super complicated either. It can just be, a fun little doodle. And if you can't draw, that's also okay. Again, you can go out in nature and just take one photo that you like of an object or a subject. So I'm actually just going to do a quick drawing, a quick sketch to show that you can also get the same idea with a pen. And, well, it's not going to be very good, but it is going to be quick because we don't have all the time in the world here, unfortunately.
Hey, Bobby, when you created your cutout hands, did you just erase around them, or what specific tools did you use?
Oh, yes. So actually, this is where I would go to Photoshop and show y'all. And yeah, I'm actually not going to show that drawing because it's really bad. This is more valuable information. Okay, let me share my screen for Photoshop here. Sorry, just give me one moment. Oh, here we go. New share, Photoshop, share. Okay, so you got, Alicia, I'm just checking you can see Photoshop, right?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, if you guys are using Photoshop, you have all these tools here. you can use this lasso tool. This is a very useful basic thing you can do. Is you can just go ahead and I'm using my mouse pad right now. You don't need an expensive tablet or anything. You can just go ahead and select around the hands. And obviously this is already cut out, but when you do it, it might be embedded in an actual photo. I wish I still had the photo that I used, but I don't. So I'm just gonna show you guys how it works on this plain green background here. So it's just going all around the hand. I'm just gonna do this in one go. You don't have to do it in one go. Actually, I'll demonstrate that in just a second. So I'll make a little mistake there so you can see. Okay, so we got our hands selected. Now in order to get more, because I made a little mistake here, you want to get that in there, there's different options. So you can press add to selection, you can press subtract to selection. So I'm going to press add to selection, this one right here, and you can add in. But oops, see that? I added too much. So I'm going to go back and press subtract. And that subtracts, okay. So subtract more here. And when you're doing this, try to select right at the edge of where you want it, but then go out like that. So you are catching all of the excess. That makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. You'll have to play with it a little bit. Think if you've never done this before. Okay, so then you can right click, and there's this menu comes up. There's all these different options. You can go to layer via copy. So that will make a new layer. Whatever you're selecting, this could be a bird or an orange or whatever. Make a new layer, but it'll copy it. Don't do layer by cut because it'll cut out this image and it might damage your original. So if you make a mistake, it's best to have your original intact. That way you can go back and try again. So go ahead and do layer via copy. Okay, and now if you get rid of your background, the layer that you selected is there. So now you can go ahead and use this however you want and move it around with the move tool. So that's how I cut out the hands. Actually, we're at it. Okay, so I did the hands, but how did I get all of this in here? So I wanted a feeling of humans interacting with Earth. So I had the idea of hands holding moss and plants. And actually, it might have been easier for me to go outside and pick up some plants and take a picture of my hands picking up some plants. But I didn't. I photoshopped the plants into my hands. So you can do that too. You can actually set things up before you take pictures of them. It works either way. So now that I have my hands, I can go ahead and select. This isn't going to be exactly the same because it took me a little bit longer to get a perfect setup for it. To get to get this all nice and droopy and this all cleaned in here. Because these projects do take a little bit more time. But this is kind of just a tutorial to get you started. They don't have to take all the time in the world, but I like to take a little bit more time with mine. So, but to give you a rough idea, or to give you the idea how to do this, I'm going to head, oops, so I was on the wrong layer. So there's two layers now. You can press the one underneath this. I know layers can be a little confusing if you've never used them before. They're just like when you have a book like this. There's different pages. It's when you do a paper craft, if you cut out the top of one page, you can see underneath to the next one. That's how layers work too. So basically, the one on top, if there's no color or anything, you can see down to the one on the bottom. So this one on the bottom, you can see here, this is my background. So if I make a new layer, is this button. And I go here, this is a fill tool. This fills the whole canvas with color. I can fill this with blue. That's a really bright, awful blue. I don't know, actually this might be someone's favorite color. It's not the best blue for our background here. It's a little bit too saturated. This is a color picker. So you can go ahead and pick different colors. That's these squares down here. So I'm gonna go for, when I say saturated, I mean it's very pigmented. And so you want to kind of get something that's a little bit less pigmented with backgrounds, because colors affect other colors, which is interesting. If you ever look at a dot of orange for a long time, and you look away, it looks blue. And the reason why is because our eyes affect see colors in different ways with theory. That didn't come out right. There's a lot of theory behind it, and it changes it around. It's kind of complicated. But in the meantime, all you got to know is that it's best to have a neutral background, like gray, brown, or something like that. Yeah, we got this background. Now there's 3 layers. So we're going to go here again. We get our selection tool and select some of this plant life in here. And this photo is actually kind of shrunk down. Let me go through another process. So I could use these, but I think it's important for everyone to know how to insert photos. So let me go to File, go to Open. Okay. You can see all my files. All right, so you want to go to the photo you want to bring in, wherever it is saved. So I have this folder, photo. So go to the photo you want. So we want some plants, right? Some moss. So open up this photo. Take a second, right? So now you can go to your move tool, right here, V. But you can't move this yet. You'll have a little dialog box that says convert to normal layer. So just go ahead and convert it to a normal layer. And then you can click on it and you can drag it around. So go ahead and drag it back to your canvas and then let it go. And now you have a fresh photo you can use. And you can drag as many resources, as many photos or art pieces or backgrounds or whatever in here you need. Okay, now that we have that new photo, let's go ahead and select this moss here. Like this. So again, right click, layer by copy, and then you can go ahead and hide this eyeball down. Okay, now you can press the move tool. Make sure you're on the right layer. You can tell because it has this box with all these points. So this box is nice because you can make it bigger or smaller by pressing on the points. So you can move this over to your hands or whatever item that you're manipulating. You can turn it and position it here. Okay, so there's some moss in my hands. But that kind of looks weird, right? Because it has all these edges. So you can do to help with that, you can take more plants. As when I do layering of photos and collages, it's kind of nice to have more than one of the same thing. So if you have like a bunch of different feathers, it's kind of nice to have different kinds of feathers, not just one feather. Or if you have a sky, that's nice to have a few different colors of sky, but not always. Just variety is sometimes good. Okay, so we put some more of that in there. Then it's okay. All right, so we have all of these edges, right? They're kind of ugly. It's like, oh, it's clear that they've been cut out. So one way you can fix that is in this tool here, you have an erase tool. You click on that, right click, gives you all of these options. So this is the size of your brush, and this is the hardness. So the hardness means, I'll demonstrate here. So this is full hardness. Demonstrate this part. Okay, this is full hardness. You can see that when I make a brush stroke, it's very harsh. It's a very harsh circle, very clear circle. Now when I bring down the hardness, now it's a very soft circle. So it's kind of like a cloud. So that's what that does. It just softens your stroke. So going back to the eraser, what you want to do is bring your hardness down pretty much to 0, which means that it's soft. And then you can go around the edges, these plants. So you're on the right layer. Kind of erase some of this hard edge in here. And this works very well, not just for this, but these plants specifically. These plants. But just in general, like if you're blending clouds together or blending water with skies or something like that, it's very helpful. And don't let this tutorial or this workshop be the, if you want to learn how to do photo manipulation for these sort of projects, and you don't just want to use your own artwork or your own photos, there are many different classes online that can teach you, or that your mom and dad can find that can teach you, depending on who's watching this. So, yeah, it kind of softens it. So obviously that's not perfectly the same as this one, but it's the same methods I used. So I just chose a different photo in here. I went and erased with the soft brush all the little in-between areas, and I erased with the soft brush the plants here, and I positioned them so they looked like they were dripping down. You can see this moss. And I went over and painted a little bit over this, but it's not necessary. So, yeah, there you go. That's kind of the method I used. And then for this glow here, if you go to your brush tool, it looks like a brush. And you actually, let me see it real quick. I can show you. Right. So if you go to brush tool and pick a really bright color, the color picker all the way up here, the white. Not all the way white, add a little bit of color in here. And this can work with glow in general if you want to highlight something. You just kind of, it creates a glow. And then I erased again with the eraser. I erase the edge here. Add that hard edge with the hands. Sometimes you want whatever object you're making glow, you might want to put the glow behind that object. Because objects kind of block light. So in this case, I think it also just looks better to have that hard edge there. Okay, so that kind of made that glow. I toned it down a little bit. I made this a little bit different green, but it's the same result. Okay, so see, let's go back here. You can see, oh yes, and the last thing for this image was I added some sparkles. So this I had preloaded, but let me do this actually the way that you do it. Okay, so if you want to add like little speckles, like stars or tiny things or whatnot, might not work for your message, it might not work for your poster, but for mine it did. So you could add, just make a very small brush. This is my brush menu. I'm on the brush. Make a very small brush. Bring your hardness all the way to 100% and just kind of space these out. And you're just doing one press. Like this. Don't do like a whole bunch of them together. It's not too bad. Don't do like this, per se, but kind of space it out. And then you kind of get sparkly stuff too. Okay, that's the process. Now I have this image. Let's see. Alright, so now that we have our image that we made, and again, you can also draw something, scan it, and put it in. We're going to think about our message. The fonts and the text we're going to add in with our image. So there's something called copy, and copy is kind of the words that go along with an idea portrayed by an image. So you got your image and you got your copy that goes to your image. And copy is usually longer, but can also refer to short phrases. So for this, you probably don't want to write in a paragraph of text, but you can. For my poster, it didn't work that way. The main things that you want in your poster are your title, your subtitle, and your info. So your title is your main idea. So for example, for this, my title was It's Earth Day. That's the main idea, is Earth Day, and highlighting it. So the subtitle is the tagline or the quote or a tiny bit of information that's relevant that explains it just a little bit more. So hashtag Earth Day Awareness is like a tagline, or I could have also put a quote about Earth, or the need to preserve Earth. I'm trying to remember one of my favorite quotes. One I've heard recently is "It's too late to be a pessimist," and that's from the documentary Home, I believe, which is just saying, oops, screen sharing is now paused. Has this been sharing properly, Alicia?
Yes.
Maybe not. Uh-oh. Okay. Alright, so I think actually this wasn't sharing the whole time. Wait.
Right now, it's on the Photoshop screen.
What was that, Alicia? I can't hear you very well.
It's on the Photoshop screen right now.
Okay, as I started to share again, did you see the Photoshop screen when I was talking earlier?
Yeah, I've been following. It was all consistent with what you were saying.
Okay, great. I was like, oh no. All right, we're good. Cool. Let's see here. What was I saying? Oh yes, the quote. But yeah, you can just go ahead and put in a quote. And then, so the info is just any extra info like the date, another quote, or, but you always need to put the person or the thing that you're quoting from. So that would also be part of the info, or a website, anything like that. So
Are you currently looking at the Canvas screen or still on the Photoshop screen?
Oh, let me change to the PowerPoint. That's what we're looking at. Okay. You share. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, great. Let's play. All right, so to reiterate, since this wasn't showing, it's just an example. So we got the title and Earth Day, it's Earth Day. You can put the subtitle, which is your little bit of information, your secondary information, and then your info, which is even more information, like the date, or who you're quoting from, or a website, something like that. Okay. So it really depends on the message that you're trying to portray, but it does have a structure. Okay, so here we go. Fonts. So for fonts, I didn't write anything down here, but there's different fonts that kind of work better for different messages. I kind of chose this font because it's a little bit more featurey, and I did add a shape behind my hands collage. It's a triangle, very simple. You can do that with Canva easily, or if you want to on Photoshop, you can draw a shape, or you can use the shape tool, or you can get a shape from off the internet if your collage has shapes. So I used just some. So there's a difference between serif and sans serif font. Serifs are the little tails on fonts. Like when you look at T's, they might have an extra little thing sticking up on the T. That's called a serif. Some fonts don't have serifs, and the font that I chose here for Earth Day awareness does not. And the reason why is because I wanted it to be similar to the font on top. Because when you're choosing fonts, you kind of want a theme. You don't really want to choose more than 3 different fonts. If you have like 5 different fonts, it's going to be a little bit too cluttered. That's not necessarily true 100% of the time, but it's generally true. So even 3 is sometimes pushing it, but I chose 3 fonts in this. And they're all pretty unified. They all look pretty much the same in theme, just slightly angular. So the very last font on the bottom, where it says let's protect our home, is mixed. So let's protect our home. Let's protect our is a serif font. It has those little tails, but home doesn't. It's a sans serif font, and it's bold to emphasize it. And that's something else you can do in your posters. If you look at April 22nd, and if you look at home, on the bottom info section, they're bolded and they're a different color, which helps emphasize. So that's something that's very helpful in graphic design in general, just knowing that you can emphasize things with different fonts, with making them bold or not bold, or italic or non-italic, or different colors too, even within the same paragraph. So, and then of course I chose a color green. So yes, for the colors, the background, I chose a brown to go with the green for earthy tones, and then the green fonts, or yeah, to match the moss. Okay, so that's what we got so far. We got our image, we got our background, we got our fonts, our copy. And now the last piece here is to unify it a little bit more with our background. So to texture the background, usually what I do, and actually I'll demonstrate this in just a moment, is you can add an image, another image to your background that's vaguely related, and turn the opacity. So the opacity is the clarity of the image. So if you're thinking about if you can see through it or not. So if your opacity is high, it means that you can't see through it. If your opacity is low, it means you can. So if you turn the opacity down, you can see through the image to the background color. And what that does, if you can see, this is brown. And now this image of roots is see-through to the brown. That creates some interest for the background, but it also doesn't take away from your center image. It doesn't take away from your focal point. A focal point is the center of attention of your piece. It's what brings your eye immediately to the piece. And you don't want to take too much away from your center of attention. So like, for example, if this image was a duck and the duck had some oil on it, or if it was just a cute duck because you're advocating for ducks, you want the eye to go to the duck. And so with your background, you might have some water. And you might not have to turn the opacity down because the eye is going to go to your duck anyway. And you could just have your fonts on top of your water in a different color so that it's visible, and that works. So this background thing is really if you have a solid background and there's nothing on it, there's no other images, and sometimes a solid background works fine. But if you think like, oh, I need something more, you can try to add a picture and then turn the opacity down, or you can try to add a gradient. A gradient is when one color, you start at one color and then it softens out into another. So I have a gradient down here from blue to brown, and an image that's turned way down with the opacity. So those two combined adds interest. And yeah, sometimes when you mess with your background, your font starts to disappear, or it doesn't look quite right, so you might have to change the font color a little bit. And yeah, just mess with it, honestly. It's kind of like when you're doing a newspaper collage. You kind of just move things around until they look pretty good. Sometimes it's about what you're going for. So if you want to do more glow stuff, I kind of showed you how to do the glow with the brush and then the different brush strokes, just points. It's the same sort of thing, just adding some points in there. And then, yeah, let me show you on Photoshop some of these things that I just talked about really quick before we end here. Just gonna go to, have to change it out to Photoshop. Share. Right, so you should be able to see Photoshop. All right, so to show you what I mean with those different background elements, you can see my layers. I'm gonna turn them all off. Okay, so we got just the plain, just the plain brown background. And I mean, this works okay, but it's also a little boring. Let's see. So in order to make it more interesting, I added this light brown gradient and this blue gradient. In order to do gradients, you go to your gradient tool, which is actually a little difficult to find. You have to right click your paint bucket tool and it brings up this menu and you can see it says gradient tool right here. And in order to use it, you go up here. So this allows you to change the colors. Oops. Actually, sorry, I'm thinking of Illustrated. All right, so you go to these colors here, down here with your regular colors, and you press whatever color you want your first color to be. Let's do red. And then this second color down here, there's two of them. You press whatever color you want this color to be. Do green. Okay. So now you might have to go up here because this gradient, there's only one color being done. I'll show you, it's the red one. So if you want red, and then for it to fade into the brown, that's perfect. That works well. If you want it just to be red and blue, you go to basics, you go down, you can press this option, which turns it from just red to red and green. Or, yeah, red and green. Okay, so there you go. Now you have a gradient. So that's how you do the gradients. And I did two of them, as you can see. Okay, so now that you have your gradients in, you can put in your image. So this, I just dropped in a image of roots. Earlier I used the move tool. You can just use the move tool again, going to an image of roots, and then dropping it in. How are we doing on time here? Oh, 5. Okay, we're almost done, so we're pretty much right on time. Okay, so let me see if I can find the image I used. A lot of images here. Might not have included it. So we'll just use this image of a squirrel because squirrels are cute. Okay. So guy. So drag this. Give you the dialog box. Drag it back here. And you can plop it in here. Okay. And actually, this wouldn't have been too bad as a background either. As you can see, little squirrel back here. It's really big. It drags in really big. So if you want it to, you can resize it to anywhere you think looks good. So like, if we want it to just be here, we don't want the squirrel, we just want these plants. We can just use these plants. So, go for it. All right. Actually, this is a good example of how you might have to fix your fox. So you got this. Oh, and then something else to pay attention to with your original image here. This one, I didn't quite cut it out all the way. So if it's not quite cut out all the way, so you might have to adjust that. Sometimes that happens, but you just go ahead and select it and then erase it. So for this, now that we have our images, this is our opacity option right here. You can go ahead and bring it all the way down to, let's say, about 20%. And that should give you an interesting background. Or this one works if you just have it as 100%. It also looks fine. But then your fonts here they're kind of hard to read. That's another thing you want to pay attention to when you're making graphic design posters, is that when you put together your fonts, people need to be able to read them. So if you have green font on green, that's great, but you got to make sure that your green background is like a dark green and your font's like a light. So this right here is a pretty light green background. Let's change this to dark green. Very dark green. That might be even. Oh, I see. Okay. So I changed it to dark green, but it's still really hard to see. And that's because this opacity is all the way up to 60, or all the way down to 60. So let's turn this up. All right. So now you should be able to see it better. So it's a little bit complicated, but if you kind of play around with the different functions, opacity, layers, move tool, select tool, the colors, brushes, you can kind of begin to figure it out, how they all work together. So you got this text now is easier to read. This one is still a little bit hard. Another way to solve this is I could just change the color. You can also go underneath the text. You see my text layers here. And then this is another layer underneath. And I just made it by pressing this new plus sign in case I didn't specify that. And then go back to your fill tool. This is again right clicking where your gradient tool was. And you can fill it with, say, black. And that kind of covers the whole canvas, which doesn't work. So in order to fix that, you go to this your select tool again. But instead of going to the lasso, you can go to this rectangle. And this will give you a rectangular selection. You can select this. Okay. Now you can fill it, and it will just fill that square. So, but this is kind of hard to see. I like it how it was. So this is the transform tool again. But if you transform it like this, it's going to be small. And this kind of works, but you might not want that. So in order for that to not transform the whole thing, you can press shift. I'm pressing shift right now. I'm holding it. Hold it down, and then you can just transform that side. Okay. Now you have a little box that your font can be in, or your copy. So that's one option, or you can change all the font colors or the text colors. But as you can see, there's many. It's a very creative process. There's no right answer. There's rules that are pretty good to follow. Things need to be readable. Composition is good. Oh, that's something else I should probably talk about is composition. So the composition, I just put the hands in the middle. It's pretty typical poster composition. There's also the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is that rather than putting things right in the middle, you can put them sort of in one of these thirds. So instead of, let's say, all the way like smack dab in the middle, these hands are actually a little bit higher than in the middle, which is following a little bit more the rule of thirds. So composition, the best thing to do really is to make sure that you have enough room on all of the sides of your elements. Because if you, by elements I mean your image and your text. Because if you put anything too close to the edge, it might get cut off when you go to print it, which is always a bummer. So yeah, just make sure it's kind of away from the edge, and if it looks good to you, then it's probably okay. So yeah, it's a very creative process. There's no real right answers. It's just kind of these rules, composition. Try not to use like 5 different fonts. Make sure things are readable, things like that. So back to our original background here with the roots. Change this back to our green or light green color, light blue color. Okay, so yeah, there you have it. You have your poster. Great.
I like how painterly the hands look, because even though you had it from a photo, which still not sure how you magically like took a picture while your hands are like doing something.
Oh, I think it's a timer. You just set a timer.
Okay. But no, this is a really great example for how you can use all the various tools that you mentioned. And I think we do that like on a constant basis as artists, promoting our own stuff, but even the work of other people.
Oh yeah, we're always using these every day, all the time. So they're really, really great tools to know. Even if you're not an artist, it's nice to be able to make advertisements for yourself in a lot of different capacities, or just nice things to hang in your room.
And even though you were using primarily Photoshop, I could see how like we could even reproduce this in Canva, like with practice and knowing how to play with all the different tools in Canva, which is just a simpler version. You can accomplish like an almost identical version.
Absolutely, yeah. I think with Canva, you might have like an issue with the brush, but if you have all of your elements already, like if you have your image and you have your text and you have a background image, you can put it in Canva and kind of arrange it in the same way and get very similar results. So yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much, Poppy. If that's the end of the tutorial, what we'll do is it'll be live on Facebook recorded, and I'll put it on the YouTube channel later. Um, and so anyone who missed this will be able to watch it on their own time and kind of follow through your steps. And yeah, so thank you again for all that you shared with us in this introduction to graphic design.
No problem. I did want to share one more thing before I forget, though. It's in my PowerPoint. Just a moment. Let's see, where is it? I have one more slide. Okay, so if I know we didn't have really attendees, but there's a website called sjconnections.news. I believe they offered, Alicia, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but they offered to publish posters potentially if they were decent enough to go in a newspaper. So if anyone wants to create something, or if you created something and you wanted to send it to them, you can go ahead and email Sky. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if anyone is interested in contributing to graphics to the Peace and Justice Network, they're so open to having that support because I think they're just using stock photos right now. And so if they can have like customized graphics, I think that would help amplify their mission. And the opportunity is there. We just have to go and get it if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah, so if anyone's interested in that, making some graphics for them potentially, go ahead and email us. Try. What's our email again that we're using right now?
Stockton at Gmail.
StocktonChai@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You can go ahead and email us. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And thank you, Alicia, for hosting. Really appreciate it.
Of course. And until next time, Stockton tries providing workshops for the community. Take care. Bye.
Bye.